Welcome to episode 46 of Cyclops is Waiting For Me, an X-Men the Animated Series weekly recap podcast. I'm Rod. I just put out a Christmas song. I don't know if anybody cares about it, but
this will be out before Christmas.
Yeah. Oh, well, cool.
Yes.
I didn't know for sure.
Yes, this will be out before Christmas.
It's inspired by my favorite Christmas movie and its sequel that just came out, A Christmas
Die
Story.
Hard.
Yeah, Die Hard. Actually, I almost got the Hans Gruber Nakatomi Plaza advent calendar, but then I saw that it was going to be coming from like Shenzhen or something, so it was going to arrive like on December 23rd. So
that's not helpful.
Yeah, but yes, it's called Merry Christmas, Ralphie, and definitely about National Lampoon's Christmas.
And I'm JC. You can find me on probably all the other social medias other than Twitter, because as of the day we're recording this, that thing is on fire. And you can find me at the John Carl. I don't have an advent calendar set for this year.
Me neither. Last year I got that Marvel Lego one, and it was okay.
I do the Star Wars one every other year. This is my other year.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You said that you weren't too impressed with last year's one when you looked at it.
Yeah,
and
the Funko one was a real letdown last year.
It was okay. I saw this year's Marvel one. Somehow this is way more disappointing.
Is it just all Hawkeye?
No, actually that would have been better. This one, it started off with a good idea. It was Guardians of the Galaxy because the holiday special is coming out.
Oh, I did see that one. Yeah.
But it's like they really piecemealed it.
Yeah.
So there's not complete. You'll get like part of a Christmas tree one day and then like an ornament for it the other day, but not like a full-size one, like the size of a Lego figure thing. So when you look at all the parts, you're probably getting like 4 or 5 things or whatever. Anyway.
Cyclops is Waiting For Me is our weekly podcast series. We're going back and watching every single episode of the original 1992 X-Men the Animated Series and their original intended script order, building up to the release of X-Men 97, which is coming to Disney Plus in the latter part of 2023.
Some quick reminders. We're a recap show about a series that started now over 30 years ago. There will be spoilers. If you don't want to spoil it for you, pause the podcast, watch the episode, and come back. We'll do our best to avoid mentioning anything about future episodes we haven't covered yet. We're currently not sponsored by or affiliated with Disney or Disney Plus in any way.
That's just because you constantly talk shit about them.
Although last time I didn't. Last time it was our guest.
That's true.
He went on a long tirade.
Don't forget to follow us on social media at Cyclops IWFM Pod on Instagram. Are you still making TikToks? I uninstalled TikTok from my phone.
Oh, that's probably for the best. Yeah, I'm just posting the same thing.
Okay.
It's the same piece of content. So
yeah, the same thing that goes to YouTube Shorts. Yeah. We don't put it on Facebook because nobody goes to the Facebook group.
Right.
Technically, there's again, Twitter, if it still exists. And make sure to follow us on your favorite podcast service of your choice. Hopefully that's where you're listening to this. But if you found it on Facebook or YouTube, we're not a visual show, so you should definitely use a podcast app for us.
And if you're seeing something, let us know what it is, and possibly a doctor or therapist as well.
And finally, we record these episodes in batches. If we're reacting to any news about the upcoming series or wondering if this episode is going to post before Christmas, now you know why.
Now onto the show. Today we're going to be talking about Season 4, Episode 9, titled One Man's Worth, Part 1. It aired September 9th, 1995, and currently sits at an 8.1 star rating on IMDb. So, if you listen to the last few, we don't know how many episodes it is yet.
I'm imagining 2?
I think it's 2.
If this needs to air before Christmas, it's 2.
And you know that we were originally going to record this in the batch with that one, but Joe had thoughts. I want to say about Nightcrawler, but not really. It was about everything else.
There were also thoughts of Nightcrawler interjected.
It was included.
Including when you fucked up the recording. We lost some of his thoughts of Nightcrawler.
Okay, so that's a nice little, speaking of tangents, we learned that, you know that problem in the 2000s and like late 90s with your phone, you could hear it in electronic devices? Apparently that still happens.
If you put your phone directly onto the wire. Yes.
So yeah, there was noise interference in Joe's line. I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. And then we found out it was because he was leaning his phone on the mic cable. I didn't know that was still a thing.
I didn't either.
But it's not been on my radar for literally a decade.
No.
So anyway, we'll probably be releasing, if we haven't already, all the alternate stuff from that episode, because there was a good 10 minutes.
You have alternate stuff?
Because there was 10 minutes that...
Oh, with the clicking?
Yeah.
Dope. Can't wait.
Including where I mistook him for Joe Russo. That's not the Joe Russo you're thinking of. So it's even like a 3-layered fun thing.
Joe's last name is Slepsky, and you called him Russo to his face.
Yeah. It was great. It was a good conversation. It was fun.
That Joe Russo still needs to come on the podcast, though.
Yeah. Joe, I know you're listening to this. That Joe, I know you're listening to this.
I still haven't watched Get Out, Joe.
At this point, you probably already know everything about the movie.
From being yelled at by Joe, yeah.
But
now on to the show.
So this episode opens at Bard College, May 11th, 1959. I didn't think about this. Is that a real school? I'm not good with these Ivy Leagues. Okay, good. You don't know either. I have so many gaps in my just world knowledge that I'm not sure if... Was I supposed to know that? Was that supposed to be important? Was that supposed to be like a...
Bard, B-A-R-D, right?
Yeah.
That is apparently in the Hudson River area in Catskill Mountains of New York State. So,
hey, so it tracks.
Yeah.
It's in New York.
That that all makes sense.
And we see Nimrod and Bishop fighting. The episode starts with one was like chaotic. What the fuck is going on?
Sorry, side note.
Yeah.
So I looked up Bard College. It actually has the hours of closing as 11:30 p.m.
That's hilarious. I thought you were going to say Charles Xavier is an alumni.
Literally the top. It has a 4.4 rating out of 5 stars on Google, and it closes soon at 11:30 p.m. Eastern time.
That's great.
Okay.
Also, that gives me an idea. If anybody out there is like a vetted wiki author, see if you can sneak in Charles Xavier as like an alumnus.
Because you want them to lose their credibility?
I mean, it's Wikipedia. It's already lost credibility.
That's true. Yes. But anyway, so yeah,
for
we
this-
see Bishop and Nimrod fighting. And also, how did you describe it, Rod?
Cyberpunk, Wolverine, and Storm.
And I just put Wolverine and Punk Storm when
Punk
my
Storm,
notes.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think the cyberpunk energy I was getting is because I saw Nimrod, and the reason also that I'm leading this episode, like John said before, was that I have there's this tradition of
Bishop episodes, you have led every one of them.
so it's just funny because I really don't have much of an attachment to the character. It's just where the chips fell.
The first few times it was.
Yeah.
Now, as we're going through and prepping for the episodes, I literally text Rod and I'm like, it's a Bishop episode.
Yeah.
These are yours.
I feel like now I'm going to meet him in my near future. Like he's going to teleport. He's like, I was real, or I'm going to be real. How does that work with future? Anyway,
It's also a cartoon character, Rod.
yeah. Listen, after the last couple of years and what it looks like the near future is going to be, anything's possible.
Oh, God.
Anyway, so this whole fight is happening. Young Xavier is watching from the window, and I feel like he's our eyes in this, where he's like, what the hell is going on? I got to get out of here. So
I just want to point out, young Xavier just looks like Xavier, but he's standing.
yes.
Like, young Xavier still looks like the same dude.
He's still bald. and
Yeah,
everything.
he was
Like,
already bald. He's about the same size. Like, he's just not wearing as nice of a suit.
That's funny. It's like the opposite aging as in the X-Men movies. James McAvoy and stuff are their same age through every decade. And then the 2000s hit. Everyone ages literally 20 years
Yeah.
in a single year.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he's like, I gotta get the fuck out of here. So he tries to leave like the lab or dorm room, wherever he's in. And the door's triggered. Or
Yeah, so essentially he was in a hallway and I don't think it's really get out of there. I think he's trying to find a spot to hide.
Yeah.
So he goes deeper into the school and unfortunately the door he chose is rigged. Wolverine smells, he specifies an electric fuse, which I don't know why they specified that other than,
standards and practices.
I don't know.
Is that where we blame everything
Yeah,
on?
maybe it's just, oh, kids can't rig a bomb with, now they probably could, but kids can't rig a bomb with an electric fuse now. So he does that and then all of a sudden it just blows the fuck up.
Yeah. The explosion with people in the building wasn't the problem. Anyway, so it cuts to simultaneously. Man, time travel's weird. I don't know how to describe it.
You add extra words with time travel that are unnecessary,
Well, it's like the
which is why you lead the Forge episodes.
Bishop.
So, also still Forge.
Yeah, Forge, yeah.
Did you lead the X Factor episode?
I honestly can't remember.
Neither can I.
I'm Forge as well, if that's true.
Yep.
I guess what I mean is
At that point.
that Nexus point or something. Not Nexus. It's like that intersection, like that moment caused the rift.
Time is a flat circle.
You're right. Jeez. We add more context. So anyway, I guess it's like that moment of the rigged door going off set off this thing in the future. I guess that's what I mean.
In 2055.
55.
Yep.
So in 2055, Forge sees an alarm going off, says there's some like temporal anomaly.
Yeah, it specifically says time travel rift detected.
I guess it's equivalent if you're someone who didn't see this original show, but you have watched the recent Marvel stuff. Very similar to like branching timelines in Loki. And I guess they're kind of pruning them in a certain way, like where they don't want it to veer off to a future that's not theirs.
This one kind of goes to the singular timeline rule that if somebody goes back and changes something,
Yeah.
it doesn't create multiple pathways. It just sets the new standard path.
Yeah. So I guess in that sense, there's a little bit more at stake because there's not even like a world that something will exist in.
Yeah. It's binary of it's this route or there's no route.
Yeah. And Forge sends Bishop, and then I have in my notes another lady who we'll find out in the next episode. His name is Shard. Send them both to the past to undo this thing that has changed the timeline. And then we get the implication that they're not sure exactly what it is, so that they have to go figure it out while they're there.
Yeah, there's a few things that stand out about Shard. One, the uniform, very similar to Bishop's.
Yeah.
And then also you see she has the face tattoo as well, which we talked about in a previous episode. That was like the signifier that somebody was a mutant in this time frame.
Oh, yeah. I'd actually forgot about that.
Yeah.
It's
Because it is literally an M across their face. Yeah. And they say the others went back before. So that phrasing implies that they know somebody is going back and messing with the timeline. They don't know who, but they know that it is somebody messing with the timeline, not like a natural cause of events.
Yeah, because it's changing something that's currently already in place or whatever. And that's something else that confuses me about time travel in this context is, and we'll discuss this a little bit more because they talk about it, is that it takes time for time to change.
Time has to catch up to itself.
Yeah, my head is not like wired that way to be able to fully wrap itself around the concept. You know?
I forget where I've seen it, but there was the metaphor of it's like a ripple.
Yeah.
And if you drop the stone into the lake, it takes a while the further from when the stone is dropped in the direction to notice the change.
It's just wild because I think individually I understand the concept, but then putting together is like where it's hard to wrap my head around. I saw a string of tweets recently where people were talking about their experiences having comas, and like a number of people said that they didn't know they were in a coma.
They just wake up and they are just like woke up.
They have lived their lives. They said they have lived entire lives. Some people wake up speaking entire different languages because they learned it while they were in a coma. I can't wrap around that either. That's a whole other thing.
That's a very different show. We're in the present day and flying around the grounds of the mansion, and she has a picnic with Wolverine set up.
It's kind of cute. Although we haven't really seen them in this kind of casual thing together, right?
They've shown like lots of mutual admiration and respect for each other, but never really like the one-on-one hangout moment kind of thing. And then they get into some Garden of Eden references.
It was Storm that said, Wolverine offered her an apple, and then she said something to the effect of, I'd be remiss not to draw the comparison between Eve or something.
Yeah.
I was like, what is that supposed to mean, Storm? Flag number 1.
And then Xavier pops in and he mentions that he was always resistant to the idea that knowledge is what ruined paradise.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really interesting, juxtaposed in script order to the fact that this was right after the Nightcrawler episode.
Oh, okay.
Which we also literally saw the tapestry of the Garden of Eden in that fight scene in the Nightcrawler episode.
Think about that. And also, spoiler out of context, this with when we revisit Xavier in this scenario in the next episode, you get the sense that he may have a little bit of an inkling of the alternate future.
Let's talk about that in the next episode.
Let's put a button in that, because it's just like you said, it's a really weird thing to say at that point, and then he says something else weird later.
See, I actually don't think it's weird that he says it. I think it's interesting from a script perspective that we had an episode that was very focused on faith and religion and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then Xavier just happens to show that very differing viewpoint.
Yeah.
And Wolverine's kind of at the center of both episodes. So it was interesting timing when the way that it played out in real time is these two episodes were not broadcast next to each other. But when you look at it from a script order perspective, that I thought was cool.
Yeah, I would just mean like with him saying wisdom isn't necessarily a bad thing and stuff. And he's like kind of winking and nodding at Storm and Wolverine. It's like, what's going on here? It's like, totally, are you just like watching them from the corner having a date? I don't know what's going on here.
Yes. He's a very creepy old man.
So he gets interrupted by a temporal storm.
Yeah.
I only know it's called a temporal storm because that's what they say.
There is a bunch of wind. There's like a big reddish wave that comes across. And they call it a temporal disturbance.
Okay. Because I guess that was a nice little detail. I don't know if it was intentional. Is that Storm would be the one to know if it was a natural occurring disaster or whatever and stuff. But this ain't.
Yeah, she's like, these aren't my elements.
And then they embrace because I guess it felt like it was like a combination of a thunderstorm and an earthquake because they said a disturbance. And then it flashes between them in that embrace to the future, with Storm and Wolverine also embracing. But I don't even know how you can get this through animation. It's just already a different vibe. Like, it went from them, like, what the fuck is happening? They were together.
Yeah, there was a closeness about how they were holding on to each other.
Yeah, and so this future...
They literally say alternate present, same day. Specifically, that's called out on
alternate present?
Alternate present, same day. It's called out on the screen.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's not even the future. It's just that moment. So that would have been simultaneous. I had an opportunity to use the word correctly there.
Sure, let's go with that.
But these are what I call the Cyberpunk Wolverine and Storm. And then Cyberpunk Beast shows up. He got an upgraded backpack.
He shows up when there are, I called them green ironmongers, where we see a bunch of future tech that looks like, evil variations of Tony Stark armor and like AT-AT walkers from Star Wars and stuff like that. But you see that. So they look like green ironmongers from the Iron Man stories for me. And they get saved by what I referred to as Tactical Beast, who's Beast wearing a bunch of probably Shi'ar style tech and stuff like that. So
He's been hanging out with that ship again.
I mean, in this world, maybe they didn't sink the ship.
Yeah, literally.
Yep.
And then, okay, so there's a bunch of cameos here.
But before we even get to that cameo, we also find out Beast is an officer. They specifically refer to him as an officer and being in the trenches.
Okay.
So he's one of the leaders of their group, and it's based on Wolverine's response. Wolverine and probably Storm also fall into like that grunt category to me.
Okay, yeah. My first note was, who is Laser Eye Birdman? That's the only way I could describe him.
Mimic.
Okay, so he's not necessarily that specific power set.
So Mimic, his power was he was able to partially absorb multiple mutants at the same time.
Gotcha.
He was like, I believe, the 6th X-Man in comic release order.
Okay, so my description wasn't completely wrong.
No, because
Laser Eye Birdman.
So he has laser eyes from absorbing Scott, the wings from absorbing Angel, and then if you notice, he also had no shoes on, and he was like a little bulkier from a body perspective.
Oh.
That was absorbing early pre-Blue Beast.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So that you were not wrong about it, but that's Mimic.
Gotcha.
Remember how in an earlier episode I commented on the outfit of Angel?
Yeah.
And I was like confused if it was Angel or if it was Mimic.
Gotcha.
This is actually Mimic.
Okay.
Yep.
And then my note specifically says, whoa, Daddy Magneto just saved the day.
Please share what you're describing with that, because you're right.
Like,
but
he's got the whole, like, beard thing going, but he still has the helmet.
he's also
He's really ripped.
super ripped, like sleeveless with like extra 90s armbands on him, but you just see how jacked he is.
Yeah, the only thing they could have made more 90s is instead of the armbands, if he had like tribal tattoos around his biceps.
That wasn't until like late 90s though. That was
That's true.
That was
That's true. That was almost Y2K.
That was like 99 2000.
Yeah. But yeah, he's just actually, it kind of reminds me of anyone that's seen concept art for the X-Men 97 series. Gives me it's not the exact same design, but gives me a lot of that energy. And there was a comic book cover I saw a while back where there was a jacked Magneto like that had all the facial hair and stuff. And I don't know if that's a reference to it or not.
So let's get into that. So from there, we start to see what Rod refers to as the batch of cameos. Age of Apocalypse designs for Sabretooth, Wildchild,
Sabretooth,
and Colossus.
Did I not catch Colossus?
So he has a like classic Ninja Turtle style Raphael headband, but it's like covering his eyes all the way over to the back of his head. So that's why it doesn't immediately stand out as Colossus, because you're losing like the signature hair.
It almost
so
like
like
the Iron Fist look or something.
Yeah, but with red. Yes, yeah. But the other two mutants that are running towards that robot are the Age of Apocalypse designs of Sabretooth and Wildchild.
Okay. Man, they're not going to do this because 97 is coming out, but almost would have been really like a cool concept as well for now, is to continue these like tangent story arcs and timelines and stuff from the 90s.
So I do have a comment that about the comments,
because it's like you kind of want to see what led up to this or this world. You don't want to live in the main timeline, but it might be a cool like miniseries or something.
Right. Yeah. But the interesting part is Eric Lewald did not know about Age of Apocalypse, and Age of Apocalypse was published only 8 months before this came out.
Oh wow.
So when it came to character designs and the future versions of these characters, they were like freshly getting done and just must have gotten shared with that art team over in Korea that was doing the animations.
Yeah, that was wild.
Yeah.
Because that's also like risky because everything needed so much lead time back then.
Yeah.
Things could have completely changed.
But I think part about this is not referred to as the Age of Apocalypse. It is just a future version, an alternate version of these characters.
Oh, and then I forgot to mention that it was also very apparent that Magneto's now the leader.
Oh, yes. They actually called him the leader.
Yep. But he had stepped in of like where Charles Xavier never existed.
Yep.
Magneto, for whatever reason, like founded the X-Men, who weren't called the X-Men, but it ended up still being roughly the same crew.
You have somebody gathering powerful mutants, so it would make sense of who would be a part of that. Yeah. For transparency, in the comics, Age of Apocalypse starts because Legion, who is Charles Xavier's son, went back and killed his father. That set off the alternate timeline events that led to the Age of Apocalypse coinciding in the 90s the same way this is an alternate present.
Wow, sci-fi is weird.
Yeah. Battle starts breaking out. Storm ends up getting hurt in an explosion trying to save Wolverine. There's like a double team maneuver between Wolverine and Sabretooth. And if you didn't catch that with Sabretooth, that didn't stand out to you. Yeah, but that was actually Sabretooth with him. Wild. We get a Nightcrawler cameo with Beast where they're taking down one of the...
They called it a land crab?
Yeah, the land crab.
Which sounds like an STD.
It is. Then Magneto is on like a skiff, essentially. And based on the color scheme of the outfit, I'm assuming he was with Bobby. Because I could have seen it also a little bit looking like Morph, but the color scheme of the outfit was Bobby.
I think I was wondering that at the time.
Yeah.
Because is that also the same, around the same time where like they flew by Sinister, and I was like, is Sinister just a soldier in this?
Yeah, so Sinister was there, and then the other character was there. Context, the character's name has changed over time. In the comics, that is essentially Apocalypse's son, who is called Holocaust.
Oh, wow.
And they've over time changed the name to Nemesis because of obvious reasons.
Yeah. I think I remember Nemesis now.
Yeah.
I remember the design.
I think they started changing the name with Nemesis when they were making like a toy for him because you didn't want to have a toy. And then we see Gambit, who only has one arm.
Oh, I didn't notice he only had one arm. I know Gambit there.
If you go back and look, he literally only had one arm.
Wow.
Yep.
Yes, there's so much of the story here that'd be really great to like offshoot to for a little bit.
But at that point, we see Wolverine and Storm. Wolverine runs. You see the ring on Wolverine, then he runs over to Storm, and then you see Storm's ring.
I do know this storyline because this was one of the rare comics I did read. Not a series, but like an issue. I just remember Wolverine and Storm on the cover clearly being in a relationship. And so I was like, oh, they're going to address this thing where they were married in the future.
But the funny thing is, if you look at Age of Apocalypse, they were not actually married in Age of Apocalypse because Wolverine was with Jean in Age.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so they just mixed all the...
Yeah, they took a few alternate timelines. Yeah. Magneto drops the Walker, and then we get the alternate versions of the Avengers popping out.
Is that okay? Is that Ant-Man?
So it's an alternate version of Cap, Black Widow, Giant Man, Wasp, and then the other character looked like Boomerang. I don't know if that was like supposed to be a play on Hawkeye, but Giant Man and Ant-Man have been multiple people under the outfit.
I have to rewatch that scene now because I didn't catch the Avengers thing, but my notes literally do say, is that Giant Man?
It is.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And one of the mutants from the Asteroid M episode, the dude with the red mask, is actually the one who makes the save. And I feel bad. I don't know this guy's name, but he appears a shit ton in this show.
Yeah.
So
he's made up for the show like tonight.
I don't believe he is. I think he's just pseudo obscure character, but he's got a cool design. But they start going back to the med bay area or the medical tent, essentially.
It's like put together bunker or something.
And then did you catch the most important cameo of the entire episode?
Based on my notes, no, I didn't.
Okay.
So I just had that Wolverine asked for Dr. Summers, which I thought was an interesting.
So before that, I literally time coded it for other people to see. At 7:16, there's a character sitting in the foreground who has a white head and like all white face. That is Morph.
Oh, wow. Oh, but he's the Changeling design, right? Or am I remembering that right?
So the design that he is in is the Age of Apocalypse design, which since Age of Apocalypse, since Changeling had already been killed in the comics before then, that was the design for Morph for about 15 years.
Okay.
Which has inspired the X-Men 97 design.
I wonder, I vaguely remember, because again, it was a week since I watched this.
Yep.
I think at that time I was questioning if that was a reference to Darwin.
So this was well before Darwin existed.
Yeah.
Darwin didn't exist until after 2005.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I wasn't even aware of Darwin until the X-Men movies.
Yeah, no, Darwin was created after House of M.
Gotcha.
Which was 2005.
Okay, so that's wild. So we saw a Morph that wasn't like a human looking passing person or whatever.
Yep.
That's wild.
Which I love because this was just filled with Age of Apocalypse references for me. As somebody who has read the original Age of Apocalypse and I loved it, it was great seeing all these designs used and such.
It'd be really great for comic books for someone like me who doesn't like retain the storylines from reading as well. Remember like
pictures? Would pictures help?
But see, that's the thing. Remember like a decade or 10, 15 years ago when like motion comics were a big thing? That would be really cool.
I think they still do them on like random thing.
Okay, but there was like a lot. Like anytime any story got pretty prominent.
I think they're there. They just aren't popular.
More people can probably read better than I can.
I think that may be a factor, Rod. Yeah, so they run in and they ask for Dr. Summers, and there's a few more like cameos in the background, some of the Morlocks and stuff like that.
Is that Scott they're asking for?
It's implied that it's Scott.
Yeah, that's wild to think. Okay, can you imagine him as a doctor?
Why did your leg fall off?
What is wrong with you?
No. Which I will point out, since we are talking about Age of Apocalypse as a corollary to a lot of this storyline, in Age of Apocalypse, he and his brother are actually on the other side of things. They are, they are enemies to this, and him and Wolverine go at it hardcore, and that's actually like a part of why like Scott lost an eye.
I guess that, and then he really is a Cyclops.
Yeah.
I guess there's something to be said for someone who's so much of a Boy Scout like Cyclops is, that it may have only depended, he's so loyal that it may have only depended on who got to him first. And then he was just going to like pledge loyalty there.
So when they're looking for Dr. Summers, there's an attack from another walker, and we see Jason Weingard, however we say his name, I don't know, but Mastermind in his like older, not as proper version of himself. And he makes an illusion that basically lets the walker go by without noticing the base.
Okay. And that explains how they're able to like hide in almost plain sight.
Yeah.
There's no roof on this like thing that they're in.
Right.
Whatever's like ruins or something.
Right. And that's when Bishop and Shard come back.
Yeah, so Bishop and Shard arrive from, which if I'm keeping it straight, they are actually from the future. And then they are in an alternate present day now.
Accurate.
And Wolverine confronts them because he's like, where the hell did you guys come from?
First thing that Bishop says is, or one of them says, is that Fitzroy and Nimrod must have succeeded. And then Wolverine spots them.
Okay, gotcha. And Wolverine just starts yelling at him, which I get because he's taking his wife essentially to an ER in the middle of a war. And then these two randos just show up.
That he's never seen before.
Right?
Yeah. And you have to assume the other side of this war has superpowered beings, obviously, because they just fought the alternate Avengers, essentially. So if you're seeing somebody in your trenches who you've never seen before, your default isn't that they're on your side.
And even though we see them as like pretty like similar looking in costume and stuff, it's probably really jarring because Bishop and Shard are in very much more like actual uniforms.
Yeah, they're more like fatigue uniforms kind of stuff. Yeah.
And since this is an alternate present, where it's like basically post-apocalyptic kind of world, everyone's just I guess part of the reason I said cyberpunk is everything feels pieced together, and everyone's what they're wearing. Besides a couple weird cameos, like Sinister was clearly just the same thing.
Sinister is also bioorganic, so I think it's easier for him to be the same.
That suits his skin.
Yeah.
That's such a weird thing to think about now. It makes sense.
He chose it. Yeah.
Right?
Bishop makes some comment about the X-Men, and Wolverine responds, "What are the X-Men?"
Yeah, and that they need to save Xavier, and nobody knows what they're talking about, which you would think for time travelers, they would have a little bit more practice.
Wolverine is asking the obvious questions like, how did you get behind the lines? How do you know us? How do you know where we are? And Storm just straight up doesn't believe any of the stuff that they're saying.
Yeah, and then they run for a while, and they don't mention it outright right at the beginning, but you as a viewer see that it's clearly like the ruins of the mansion.
Yeah, it's pretty clearly
even
the mansion.
Though it wasn't the Xavier's mansion, it was the mansion that we were at. I also put here,
in theory, it would have still been his family's mansion.
That's true,
because his family had the money before they sent him off to Bard College.
Wait, so that makes it confusing with like, who's Xavier. I guess maybe they weren't specific. Well, I don't know. We don't know enough about this timeline to know if they went to school there.
They say you need to save Professor X's life, and that's the thing. Is like, who is Professor X?
Yeah. But I put a note here. I love it how even in an alternate timeline, it still carries the tradition of the mansion being destroyed.
Yeah.
So Shard uses her. Is it the time? What did we call them before? The wrist things.
Fitbit.
Yes. Your Samsung watch thing, whatever those are called.
Yeah, displacement bracelet or whatever the hell it's called.
It also has a hologram shit on it. So Shard shows Wolverine like the footage from their future. Or wait, no, shows not the future. Shows footage of what Xavier has done through history when he lived.
Yeah, of the original timeline.
Yeah.
So they kind of are like shocked that this is all because of the absence of one person. And Storm believes it.
And Wolverine is skeptical, as I think most people would be.
You also got to think of it in the context of like time frame. Like you're hearing this incredibly radical theory about time travel, which you don't know exists. Mm-hmm. And you're hearing it in 4 minutes of meeting a person.
Right.
And then Wolverine is looking at the footage, and I think this is where Wolverine actually gives the hint that he believes it, but he doesn't want to believe it. Because he says, if we do this, we work together, but we aren't going to be together.
That's a wild thing to think about, and part of what I love about sci-fi is it brings in the scenarios of that just will never happen, and hopefully will never happen in real life. And
it already has. We just don't know about it.
That is
like
I totally believe that.
like the Matrix has reset 4 times.
I get that because what did I say? I said in the last episode I'm clearly from another timeline because I just remember something different. Oh, it was about the Cyclops action figure.
Yes,
I'm from an alternate timeline.
Yeah, but you were right.
Yeah, or was I? And it changed again. So he kind of doesn't want to do it, and then Storm was like, "Would you sacrifice literally
the whole world,
the whole like universe, world, or whatever, literal futures?" Just for us, and
he was basically like, I would do anything for you. Yeah.
And so she does talk him into going.
So Bishop and Shard also show what the future looks like. Wolverine doesn't get why they would want it, and it's because they still have hope. And you actually see 2 members of Bishop's group there, which is called the XS E, and their names are Malcolm and Randall.
Oh, I didn't know them. And
I didn't think you would, to be honest.
And they say they have to stop a guy named Fitzroy. Funny, and it's not surprising to you at all. I only know Fitzroy through the action figures because my brother and I thought he was such a cool looking figure because obviously he was like standard Marvel, jacked in a cool outfit thing. He had cool hair, but he came with like a crystal casing. I guess that was supposed to be his portable.
He did not have a cool outfit. I don't care what you say. He did not have a cool outfit. I've looked it up. This isn't me having an alternate memory of it. He did not have a cool outfit.
I know. We thought it was a cool action figure design. We especially loved like the crystal casing thing on it and stuff. So I just knew him from that. I didn't know what his powers were. It's funny to think though that crystal casing thing was probably supposed to be his portal, like how the arm thing was supposed to be Cerebro for Cyclops. But we also meet, I didn't know this, Fitzroy's sidekick, Bantam. What a weird little Uncle Fester.
This is not a cool action figure.
I like that figure. I still do.
Okay, cool. Posting that to the Instagram because that is fuck Rod.
But yeah, and actually, if my mother hadn't given it away in a church yard sale, we probably still would have had it somewhere in a toy box somewhere.
You know what? I respect your mom's decision on this. Oh my God, Rod. There is a eBay special for a $20 metallic edition Maverick and Trevor Fitzroy 2-pack.
That's hilarious.
With a mini Wolverine for some reason.
A mini Wolverine? Do I remember this?
I don't know, but here's the thing. There's no way you remember it because you didn't ever remember Maverick.
Right. Although, it's a KB exclusive. I'll bet I saw it on a shelf and didn't think much of it, probably because I didn't know who Maverick was.
You're like, not wasting my money on this guy.
Man, I miss KB exclusives. They did those packs that were probably total ripoffs in hindsight, but I remember especially with Mortal Kombat and maybe even Street Fighter, they would do pair-offs. I can't remember like the real one. I think there was one with like Kano and Johnny Cage. I'm going to get these wrong. Someone's going to correct me.
There's one with a dented box that's only $15.
Nice.
Guess what you're getting for Christmas? Because I know you're going to open it.
Yeah, they did these things with, I think it was like Johnny Cage. Oh, Johnny Cage and Goro. That's right. Because they were trying to, so that wasn't random because that was from the movie. But sometimes they would do these things where they would just be like, it's, I don't know, Kano and not Sonya for whatever reason, like Shang Tsung or something. And they were paired together, but then they would get you to rebuy it because each of them had like a different color palette on them. And as a kid, you were like, I need to have the blue Johnny Cage. And my mom's like, you have 4 of them already. Like, what the?
You already don't like Johnny Cage.
Exactly. It was like, but it's the blue one. But it was all about KB exclusive pair-up things. That Toys R Us, I'm going to guess, had those, but we didn't have one in the area that I was growing up as much as KB.
I think Toys R Us just didn't give a shit because they were so much bigger than KB.
That's true too,
so they probably didn't want to pay that extra fee for it.
That's true, yeah. Anyway, they're talking to Master Mold.
Nimrod is there too.
Yeah, and Master Mold is sending Fitzroy and Bantam on this mission. And nice little attention to detail. Master Mold says, make sure to document your trip because if you succeed, I won't remember any of this.
And he also points out, if you succeed, you will be the only mutant left alive, which is pretty dark. Because he's basically like, you're condemning your entire race for your own selfishness.
Yeah. Also, he's incredibly wrong. But
yes.
Because like, I don't know the full timeline, but it's like you may have got rid of the X-Men or the guy that like would have banded them together, but you didn't get rid of the whole. Anyway, it's not mutants.
But I do appreciate there's a little reference there. Before they jump back in time to kill Xavier, they drain a character whose name is Lobdell.
Okay, I didn't know his name or if he was important.
It was weird because they called out the person's name before he drained him. Lobdell is a reference to Scott Lobdell, who was a writer for X-Men at the time.
Oh, nice. Okay, so you get a little shout out. You're the guy that dies.
He didn't die. Fitzroy doesn't drain to kill in the show.
We know of. Okay. Yeah, he said he's going to be okay in a day or two or something.
Yeah.
I like the wording, though, when Fitzroy agrees to do it. He's like, well, you know what I need then to do this? And then they bring a guy over. I'm like, what? This is a kid's show. What's going to happen? And then he just like rogues him, basically.
Yep. Yeah, basically he needs a charge before he could jump back in time. Also, Fitzroy just severely, I don't know, he's like scared of success. He has the power to jump back and forth through time, but he still decides to be Master Mold's bitch.
Yeah.
You could bend the future to your will and just do small market manipulations.
So Bishop and Shard tell Storm and Wolverine that they need to fix what Fitzroy's about to do or stop it from happening before the time change hits 2055.
Because the time change had already hit modern day alternate present. So he realized they needed to go further back.
Yeah.
And for him, it was realizing that Chuck had been killed because they didn't know who he was.
So they decided to time it to go back on the exact day it happened. I think I would have given myself a couple months to plan. I don't know.
Here's the thing. It's clarified in the next episode that the charge on the bracelets, which keep them out of time, is very limited to a couple days or a couple hours at most.
I love that even in the distant future, or I guess now is not too distant, it's only 20 years away from
It's
it, right?
actually equal time from where we are now to when the show came out. That's horrifying.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah. It's like within a year of the halfway mark.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to go cry.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? Music related thing for anybody who's listening and doesn't know for whatever reason. I'm a songwriter. So I had to register some of my music today.
You literally said
Yeah,
at the beginning of
I
the
know.
episode that you released a song.
So I write songs for other projects and artists.
There
too.
you go.
So I had to register something today, and so they always have you metadata it. And this, every time this happens, it hasn't gone. I've literally done this 100 times in the last year, but it still hurts every time. It asks you to categorize your music, and one of the criteria is era. And so now I have to specify that a music sounds like it's from the 1900s.
Wow.
So like the check box is, because if it's classical, it's 1800s and before. And then if it's like current, is it 2010s or present or 2000s?
I hate that.
And then it's 1900s is its own category.
I hate that so much.
What a weird thing. We have to lump in stuff that came out in like the 20s with Britney Spears. That's like the time frame that we're talking
I'm going to go jump in the middle of the street right now.
Anyway, so they go back to Bard College in 1959, the May 10th or 11th, I'm guessing. And then we cut away to see Xavier walking with what he calls Professor John Gray.
Who is Jean's dad?
Okay, I was wondering about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is so in one of the websites that I used to reference it, they specify that it is the same John Gray. I've also learned, and I'll actually reference this in this episode too in a few minutes, some of these websites are wrong in giving incorrect information, and I found a specific instance of the incorrect information, but I believe they wouldn't have said it was John Gray if it wasn't Jean's dad. That's
Yeah,
such a
makes sense.
specific name to say.
Yeah.
And the age lines up too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the irony of this moment is Xavier is telling Professor Gray that he can't see a world that's populated with mutants.
Yeah, because he basically is like, evolution happens over time. It's a gradual change and it's for a specific purpose. But he also just wants to become a family doctor.
Yeah, which is hilarious. And he says, Cindy, she's your woman. And so
Yeah.
Cindy's also walking with him, by the way. We don't really care about her very much.
Nobody
except
really
for-
gives a shit about Cindy.
right? There's one thing that happens later, but you don't need to know anything more about her. And then Bishop shows up like abruptly to tell Xavier he's wrong. He's meant for more than just being a family doctor, which once again, I would think Bishop doing this much time travel have a
Yep.
little bit of practice.
Just a quick note, checked. Jean Grey's mom, not named Cindy.
Okay. Oh, that'd be hilarious.
It was kind of like one of those, oh, did Professor Gray hook up? No, he did not hook up with Cindy.
Was it Nimrod? That's a foreshadowing. Jean Grey's mother was Nimrod. Anyway.
Inaccurate.
Then the other three decide, like, maybe try a softer approach. They take him out to a diner.
It's weird because we know it's obviously a bar, but they're not trying to let it be seen
yeah,
as a
that's
bar.
true, yeah.
And Shard asks Bishop, "Are these the hippies?" And Bishop clarifies, "No, this is the beatnik days."
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because hippies are 60s, right? It's like when that started, like late 60s, early 70s.
70s, I
believe
think.
so, yeah. The beatniks are more like the jazz era kind of thing. And what's hilarious is they're showing Xavier all this stuff, presumably similar things to what they showed like Wolverine and Storm.
Using like holographic
Yeah.
projection future tech.
Which kind of reminds me of like stuff in Star Wars when they're playing like the hologram games and stuff, like tabletop games and things.
The holodeck.
Is it the holodeck? The table is with like the little, that like C-3PO and stuff we're playing with there.
Oh, you said Star Wars. I thought you said Star Trek. Oh, I
You know, like
forgot the name.
tabletop game things and
Yeah,
stuff.
I forgot what that's called.
But it's very similar to that, where it's just having on a table. And Xavier's like, this is so hard to believe. I was like, you are in 1959 and seeing holograms from these people in like spandex. I feel like this would check out to an extent. Also, no one else notices.
So Bishop tells Xavier all this stuff. Basically, is like a single generation mutation is possible. Xavier doesn't believe it, and he goes, "I know that you believe it because I read a paper you wrote about it in 1978."
Yeah.
And around that same time, we also see the waitress walk by. Wolverine is just excited to have coffee. And this waitress is ignoring the holograms. At first, I
Yeah.
thought she was going to like, there's weird shit going on because of the holograms. But then I also forgot that because this is the late 50s and public racism was so prevalent,
Yeah.
we actually realized the entire reason why she's giving the nudge to the bar owner is because Wolverine and Storm are holding hands.
Yeah. And the bar owner's like, they're doing what?
Yeah.
And it's like, of all the things that are happening in that moment, like that in his head, that supersedes the holograms, the random group of people that aren't dressed at all like anybody in that area and
Yeah.
stuff. He's so concerned. I agree with Storm's sentiment at the time. She's like, racism, that's so petty.
I think she said like how quaint or something.
How quaint.
Yes,
Yeah.
is something that was obviously like intentionally, but well deserved to be like, just, like you're a petulant brat. What's wrong with you?
What did she say? Is it so quaint that it's almost pathetic or is pathetic or something like that?
Something
It's
along those lines.
And I was like, yeah, probably not too far off of being accurate of what would have happened if this whole situation would play out. And so that's what starts the kerfuffle in the bar.
Yes.
Which is wild that it wasn't these mutants in weird outfits and holograms for God knows how long they were showing him the history of the future.
So obviously Wolverine takes that personally and the fight breaks out. And then we get Moose and Rocco, which are just like the most stereotypical like thug names ever, who get involved in the fight on the side of the bar owner too, obviously.
My notes say, of course, the owner has bouncers that are named Moose and Rocco.
Did you recognize anything about the leather jacket, dude?
No, I didn't know that was going to be important.
It wasn't. So it was totally a reference. So this is where I said earlier, there are times where some of these sites that we go to research give bad information. They were saying on one of those sites, I believe it was the IMDb one, that it was Marlon Brando's character in On the Waterfront.
Okay, I'm not familiar.
So I wasn't either.
Yeah.
And then I went to one of the other sites and they said it was Marlon Brando in The Wild One.
Oh.
So then I Google image searched and I could see a similarity of On the Waterfront, but it was 100% The Wild One.
That's funny. So they just got their things confused.
They were confusing Brando looks, but that's how, like, we're always careful, and I will always specify if I get a reference from somewhere to say that I got it from a thing and if I've researched it or not. But literally, like, it is a different character versus it is obviously a reference to that character.
It usually surprises me, and it shouldn't because of how often it happens, how confident people are when they state things in semi-permanent ink on the internet.
Yes.
Like, I was talking to John before we were recording.
He just pointed at me. I just want to point that out.
In the middle of recording. So I have this like TikTok thing going on right now, right? So I talk about, like, did you know so-and-so writer wrote this song for this artist or whatever? So one of the last examples was like, oh, Dolly Parton did a cover of a Collective Soul song. Right? That's pretty standard. Like, the Collective Soul did this song 7 years earlier.
Right.
There are people confidently with their full chest on TikTok saying, actually, Dolly Parton wrote Shine. I'm like, I guarantee you that is not the case. Or if it is, there is some deep story that Dolly has not been sharing with us.
Like when people think that Johnny Cash, just because he's older, was the one who wrote Hurt.
But he sells it so well. That's why he's a great artist.
Yeah, he's amazing. He appreciated a great song, and then he did an amazing cover of it.
Anyway, so this is Marlon Brando, but from the wrong movie.
At that point, Xavier takes this opportunity to run off. And Storm gives Wolverine you did it again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So backtracking just a little bit. When Wolverine first goes at the bar owner and stuff, he's going to make like a kill shot.
Yeah, he's in the alternate future normally where he's just like, I'm just going to off people. It's easier.
And Xavier,
this is killer Wolverine.
Yeah, and Xavier's like with Storm. He's like, shouldn't you try to...
Yeah, do you want to stop him?
Yeah, and Storm's, oh yeah, no, don't. And he does stop.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, Xavier gets away. And so this team then like splits up to go look for him.
And Storm is the one who thinks that she has found Xavier, and we realize it's actually the eyes light up and it's Nimrod who eye blasts her.
Did we know that was a thing with Nimrod before? I don't remember that. I remember him reconstituting.
That was the thing. We knew that he could change form. I don't think it had been explained that he could resemble somebody else at that point.
Gotcha.
But he's also like T-1000 liquid metal, so it's not a leap.
Yeah, I just was like, would I remember that? But yeah, that was pretty wild.
Bishop drops in, and they end up fighting him, and they end up beating him up as a group.
Yeah, it was a nice little show of Bishop's power, though, because he got blasted by Nimrod, and his thing is he can absorb the kinetic energy, or biokinetic energy, and then
kick it back
and stuff. So I was like, wow, okay, so you're the one guy that can get back at all these future Sentinels.
At that point, Shard spots Fitzroy. Fitzroy is running away. Nimrod reforms and then teleports out of there.
Yeah, he did take some rando guy's soul with him.
It doesn't take his soul. He's not Shang Tsung.
We don't know that.
Yes, we do. He's not taking souls. He takes energy.
Can you imagine?
Which is the theme for this recording session. Your computer's taking all the energy and still dying.
Yeah, we have definitely not restarted this recording 4 times.
Yeah, this is the 4th one. So sorry if John sounds frustrated. Probably because he's not drinking.
Could be. You're home.
Oh, I'm going to be.
But can you imagine being that guy and trying to explain to wherever you're supposed to be after that what happened? If you're going to work, your spouse, or whatever.
Oh, dude, when we get to the 2 episodes from now, that's going to be the whole, like, imagine explaining this to your spouse.
Yeah. After Fitzroy gets away, Nimrod then reconstitutes and disappears, and we go back to the beginning of the episode where we're back at Bard College, but it's in super janky slow-mo. like 2 frames.
Slow-mo at that point is an editing choice, not a animated to be in slower motion.
Yeah, and that was like a trope in that, like actually, this was a little early for that. I was going to say late 90s. This was mid 90s, but like...
Yeah, this was 95.
Because I was watching some music video.
This is literally the mid 90s.
Actually, Collective Soul's music video for Shine. And they do that thing where 2 frames a second. And it was like, that was probably stylistic, but also like a limitation.
What's funny is I just remember Collective Soul, I believe, did a video for Varsity, or a song for Varsity Blues called Run. Okay. And that was when cameras had started getting a little bit better. And a lot of that video was like slow-mo of like side of the football field, tables getting flipped and stuff like that.
Yeah, so you're just like missing a lot of information between. Wait, what happened between because you see like the person on the other side of the field, and then the table gets flipped, but you don't have the frames between where they ran over.
No. But at that point, we get a kind of abrupt episode where we see the fuse gets lit that we saw earlier on, and then we get the to be continued.
Yeah, it fades to white.
So yes, this is a 2-part episode. For us, it feels like a 6-part episode because of the way it was recording. But yeah, we will be back next week with the part 2 of an actual part 2, not a we had a awesome conversation. And I know we're joking about it, but no, having Joe on was fantastic. And now other Joe Russo, who you can actually call Joe Russo. I'm calling you out, Joe.
Yeah, Joe, you should come. And also, just knowing me, I will probably have long forgotten by the time you get here and call you by like...
You're going to call him Slepsky.
Yeah.
You're going to think that it's Joe from the Joe on Joe podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. If you have any thoughts, make sure to drop them in the comments for either the YouTube upload or official Instagram post about this episode. If you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a rating on the podcast app you're choosing. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, CastBox. I don't know which one of those is going to be canceled next week.
They're going to start doing Twitter podcasts.
We don't know anymore.
Yeah. Bring back Vine.